Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Crash Bandicoot 3 Warped! I'm not sure if I'll say that every single video. In the last part we start off the game and now we're heading into our next level mechanic, making waves. This is another level mechanic where Coco takes control and we're on a jet ski that controls kind of like a tank. You press X to move forward, but otherwise left and right are only for turning and that's it. Watch out for any hazards along the way, be it enemies, bombs, ramps that lead you into crates or bombs or enemies. And try your best not to fight the controls. I don't like the way the jet ski controls. I never have. And slight controversial take, I actually prefer how they control in Insane Trilogy. Because Insane Trilogy added a lot more weight and made me feel like I actually understood where I was going a bit more. Because here I feel it's a bit too loose. Especially the turning. The turning's the big thing about the controls here that I don't like. These stages aren't too hard. The biggest problem I feel is having to turn around if you miss a box, be it on a ramp, from having to look around an island that you have to take a look at a blind corner at, or just some of the hitboxes being a bit hard to judge, I feel, as outside of the enemies, the bombs are the biggest threat. And because they're 2D sprites, it's hard for me to judge exactly where their hitbox begins and ends, whereas in the Insane Trilogy, I believe it's just the model that'll do damage to you. Otherwise, I think these are a fine mechanic. They're far from my favorite levels, I think is the best way to put it. Especially given the waves themselves in the water are an active mechanic as well, as you will bounce slightly over them and they'll slow and speed you up, should the case be. And sometimes they'll hide a box just beneath the water surface to the point where you need to, say, launch off a ramp and with the impact from landing, go underwater enough to hit the box. The waves can make it hard to predict exactly when you're going to be able to do that safely. With that said, making waves is also the first stage of this variety, so it's nothing too bad. And additionally, they do have an arrow at the top of the level that points you towards, I think it's the next box or just the pathway to the end of the level. I think it's the ladder. Yeah, actually, no, I think it would be the ladder because of the one case where that doesn't really apply. But we're already getting close to the end of the stage because, well, again, it's the first of the variety. They're not going to make you spend 8 minutes here. Crystal and Gem are also pretty free here, so you don't need to worry about too much. With that, though, we are now on to our first boss fight. And whenever you access the boss fight of a tier, you cannot access the levels until after you've beaten the boss fight. With that said, none of the boss fights in this game are gonna give you too much trouble, I feel. And Tiny Tiger, especially as the first fight, as we'll see, is especially a case of it should give you no trouble.
Crash! Coco! Store the pretty crystals! Tiny, take them back! In Gladiator Arena!
Alright, Tiny's battle kind of plays a little bit similarly to his one in Crash 2, in that his main attack is to try and jump on you and impale you with a trident. Eventually, when he tries to do the trident, though, he gets stuck, and then you can use the opportunity to hit him. At that point, he's going to jump back up to the platform and summon lions. If you stand in this top left corner, though, they can never hit you, and the developers are very aware of this, especially when it comes to the remaster, because in Insane Trilogy, if you do that, the audience throws cheese at you because you're cheesing the boss fight. And I think the cheese can also knock you out of the spot, so you need to be a bit more active in trying to make sure you don't move. Partially just due to this fight's pretty easy, but even then, the lions themselves, if you are in the very back of the stage, are at such a distance that dodging them isn't too much of a problem, I feel. That said, if you're still having trouble, just cheese the fight. And for beating it, we get a power-up! Crash 3's Soul Innovation. Starting off with the supercharged body slam. For a more powerful belly flop, press X to jump and then press circle button to flop on the ground or whatever the hell.
Well done, children. By defeating Tiny,
You have unlocked the gate to the next time travel area. Go back to the center of this time twister and save your progress if you wish. From there, you will see that the gate to the second time travel area is now open.
Alright, so now we have access to Tier 2 of the levels. And power-ups are the new thing for Crash 3. Between every boss fight and every tier, you'll get a new ability that accentuates your moveset. In this case, it's just a slightly more powerful belly flop that has a shockwave effect that only comes into play maybe 4 or 5 times total throughout the game. Also, to save, you just stand in front of that wall. It's very similar to Crash 2. With that, though, let's head into our second tier levels, starting off with level 6, Gwiz. Our second level in the medieval time zone.
Why must you continue to be a thorn in our side?
What? Where was I? Tiny was a good fellow. He hated everyone and everything, but a good heart nonetheless. Please be more reasonable with my minions next time.
Nah, I think I'm fine. Alright, so Gwiz is a bit of an interesting level, because if I'm recalling correctly, this was the demo, the level that was included in the demo disc back in the day. And there's a very odd difference to this level in the PAL version of all things. Eventually, the lab assistant and enemies we've been seeing since Crash 1, they have a wizard form in this stage and the next stage of this variety. Here they're taken out in one shot from Crash, whatever it may be, but they take 2 shots to be defeated in the PAL version, which is odd, but okay. Now, something that this game has in common with Crash 2, and I think maybe Crash 1 in the Japanese version, I actually can't recall, it's been a while since I talked about Crash 1, is that each of the levels in the Japanese versions had various hints from Uka-Uka that would tell you, at least give you hints on what to do, be it how to skip the hints, doing a high jump by crashing and then jumping, or in this case, if you find iron-framed boxes, which are what we saw at the beginning of the level, near the Uka-Uka crate, actually, the crates that have little iron rim around them, you need to belly flop to destroy those. That's what I mean by there are a few cases where the belly flop is actually needed. Because iron crates aren't in every level, and even then, I find myself belly flopping on giant Bix, Bix? Yes, the pen/shaving razor company. The various bunch of boxes anyway, just because it takes them out more quickly. Also, somewhere in this level, I forget where, but there's a nitro crate that a frog enemy can just walk into outright. And it's always funny to see that happen. And this is the invincibility. I think this is the first time we've seen this. 3 Uka-Uka masks, and you get to just be a never-ending force of death. You destroy any blocks, your hitbox is slightly enlarged to accentuate that. And, well, as you can see, take any damage, you don't take any damage. Honestly, Crash Bandicoot invincibility is always going to be one of my favorite invincibilities in gaming. Because compared to other games, it's just so much more satisfying because you so frequently take damage or die in these games. The only reason you don't mind it as much is because lives are so plentiful. Also, Crash 3, my favorite song in the soundtrack is actually like the various bonus themes, particularly because they're mostly, from my memory, remixes of the game's main theme, which is probably the main theme of a Crash game that gets stuck in my head the most. I don't know why, just that opening riff is so catchy. With that said, the bonus levels in the game, well, they're the bonus levels. They require minor problem solving, but it's always going to be the same solution. There's never a hazard of actual death. And this game doesn't exactly have a case of, like, cold hard Crash where you need to get a bonus then walk backwards. Wait, no, not exactly. Crash 3 does, though, even though it's not even exactly really relevant for a while, it does mitigate backtracking. And by backtracking, I mean backtracking through a level. Technically speaking, in terms of going through the levels again, Crash 3 is the most guilty next to Wrath of Cortex. But in terms of actually, like, going backwards through level design, this game only does it, like, twice. Compared to even Crash 3's, or Crash 2's 4 or 5 times from memory. By the way, that's Gwiz. It's another medieval level. There's nothing too different about it. It's the simplest level design in the series, I'd argue. Or no, not in the series, in the game, because it's the intro to mechanics. With that, now we're on to stage 7. This is Hang 'em High. The closest comparison I can make to this is that this is the equivalent to the sewer levels from Crash 2, but that's not exactly apt. Because the reason I say that is that this is the level variety where you're going to be climbing ceilings like those in Crash 2. But otherwise, it's more so a side-scrolling level variety where the enemies range from you having to jump into them to attack, slide into them, and otherwise just be careful. That monkey over there with pots in particular is why I say to slide, because if you try to just spin into them, you will die. Unless you do a jump spin, in which case I believe you'll knock the pots from the top down and onto that monkey's head. But that said, invincibility kind of breaks level design. Climbing in this game is about the same as it was in Crash 2. You can hold the crouch button to bring your knees in, even though you don't actually ever need to do that in Crash 3 from my memory. They make these segments more about moving fast with hazards around you rather than having to actively dodge. And I'm thankful because I feel this is a more satisfying way to do the hanging sections. Also, very odd thing about this level from my memory in the N-Sane trilogy is that when the N-Sane trilogy was initially released, this level was missing a crate. I think it's in one of the hanging sections. They just forgot to put one in. But they eventually patched that crate back in anyway? I guess for the purists. I'm trying to think if that would even make like the time trials that we'll talk about eventually harder, because I don't think that crate turns into one of the important ones in that setting. Also, here's an important thing to note about TNT crates and even Nitro crates. Their explosions can set off nearby exclamation point crates, meaning if you need to use them in order to access certain triggers, well, there you go. With that said, the game only has you do that maybe 2 or 3 times total, so it's not super important. Actually, maybe more like 4 or 5, counting bonus levels. I know there's at least 2 times it's required just in the main level design if you want to get everything. I mean, I guess technically speaking, it's required if you want to get 100% anyway, because, you know, clear gems, but I mean more so for just getting the crates in the main level, not counting bonuses. Alright, here was a moment I facepalmed. Yeah, I died right before a checkpoint. That's never... I hate it when that shit happens to me. And you might notice something in the background there. There's more level design behind these buildings, but we can't access that for a while. Because that's where the yellow gem is, because this is a case where we can't grab the second gem because it requires a secret pathway we don't have access to yet. Thankfully, there are no crates on that route, so we can still get the box gem. I'm gonna keep switching between crate and box, and it's probably gonna annoy some of you. Sorry. I think there might technically be a way to glitch over to back there and grab that, but I'm not sure of it. But that's Hang 'em High, I think named after a Clint Eastwood movie. It's annoying in certain regards if you don't like the climbing, but otherwise I think it's a fun enough level to go through. Honestly, I think one of my biggest things with Crash 3 is I just don't find the levels as fun to just run through when I'm not going for 100% compared to Crash 2. Oh, speaking of which, time for Hog Ride. This is yet another gameplay mechanic, because Crash 3 loves having so many different gameplay styles. We're on a motorcycle, like with Coco's jet ski, though. Press X to move forward. And this is a bit of an odd level type in that it's both a race and not. You can reach the end of the level just fine without winning. The race, that is. But if you want the crystal, you know, the thing you need to beat the game, you need to get first place. Thankfully, they place speed boosts around the place, and your motorcycle generally drives slightly faster than even the fastest car, so as long as you place yourself right and keep the speed boost going, you're generally going to be safe. Because when you hit a speed booster, what happens is you go into a wheelie, and you travel the fastest when you're in a wheelie. With that said, your control is more limited, and if you let go of the gas, you'll lose the wheelie, so make your driving choices as you go. It can be a bit tough to get a mastery of this control scheme. With that said, you can drive slightly off the road without losing speed. As long as you're generally on the gray parts of the road, off the markers, you're safe. And of course, make sure you grab every box along the way, because otherwise you're going to have to replay the race to get the box gem. Although a safer way to do that is just to get first place the first run and then just drive through more slowly to get the boxes on a second run. With that said, I'm going to need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 3, we're going to be heading over to level 9. Actually, what is level 9? Tomb Time, I think? See you guys then.